Welcome! It's Ashley from Demystifying Your Health. I'm so glad that you're here today. In this video, we're going to be talking about something that's very important to me, and that is CPR, or cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And I feel that everyone should know how to do this. Did you know that a person who is having a life-threatening emergency, their survival rate increases by double or triple the amount if a bystander starts CPR rather than nothing happening until emergency personnel arrives? So let's jump on in so that way you know what to do if someone needs help. Before we can jump into what CPR actually is, we need to understand how your body functions. The first and most important concept to understand is that all the cells in our body need oxygenated blood to function correctly and survive. They get this blood thanks to your heart pumping. Your heart is triggered to pump by an electrical current that originates in the heart muscle. If something disrupts this, your heart stops pumping, therefore your blood doesn't get traveling throughout your body. If this lasts just even a few minutes, brain damage can occur. If it lasts 8 to 10 minutes, then it most likely results in death. This is why CPR is so important. CPR is the manual compression of the heart by an outside source, usually another individual. And this will restore blood flow with oxygenated blood to your body's tissues, which help keep them functioning until the cause of the disruption can be determined and corrected. Unfortunately, sometimes a cause can't be determined, and despite doing effective CPR, the person still dies. It's important to realize, though, that time is of the essence. If CPR is not initiated quickly enough, then obviously the outcome is not going to be that good. And while CPR is very important to maintaining blood flow throughout the body, it's still not as efficient, obviously, as the heart itself functioning correctly, but it's better than nothing. So how do you identify if someone has a need for CPR? Well, let's find out. The first step in identifying if someone needs CPR is determining if they're conscious or unconscious. And you do this by tapping them on the shoulder and shouting at them, "Are you okay?" And the reason we do this is because obviously if you start doing CPR on someone and they're conscious, and maybe they're just sleeping, but they are sleeping in an abnormal position so it looks a little weird, if you start CPR on them, most likely they're not going to be overly thrilled with you, and you can actually cause them injury. After you determine that they're unconscious and are unresponsive and need assistance, the next key step is calling 911. And typically, with cell phones being readily available today, you can do this as you start CPR. If for some reason you don't have a phone available with you, you want to provide 1 minute of CPR prior to going and calling for help. And another big factor here is using an AED, which is an automated external defibrillator, if it's available. Many public locations have these available, and the employees of the store, or if you see it on the wall, it's usually within a case that you can see. Go ahead and get this and attach it and follow the directions that are supplied. Now let's actually take a look at what steps you actually need to do CPR itself. So when it comes to providing CPR, there's one key thing to remember, and that is CAB, which stands for circulation, airway, and breathing. This is a slight shift from what it used to be, which used to be ABC. The American Heart Association changed this a few years ago because people were getting so focused on the airway and breathing part that it would take a while before they actually started the compressions. And since obviously returning blood flow is key, the only way to do that is by doing compressions of the heart. The other big concept that they shifted was the idea of hands-only CPR. And that was because a lot of people feel a little funny going up to a stranger and giving mouth-to-mouth breathing. So by shifting to hands-only, you do not need to do this. And what they found was that the chest compressions themselves, by actually compressing and recoiling the chest, it allowed for enough airflow to be pumped in and out of the lungs that it actually provided enough oxygenation. So the good news is if you see someone who needs assistance, you can start CPR once you determine that they actually need it, and you don't have to worry about doing rescue breathing. All you need to focus on is compressions. And this is why I think it's so important that everyone should be able to learn this, because you never know when you might be able to save a life. So let's take a look at what steps you actually need to do here. The key thing is make sure the person is flat on a firm surface. Usually the floor works best. The next thing is you want to kneel next to their shoulders, up here in the upper part of the body. Either side is fine. And then you want to place the heel, which is this bottom hard part of your hand, over the center of their chest, which is otherwise known as their sternum. And what you're going to do is you're going to put one hand down with the heel of the hand on that part. You're going to put your other hand over the top and lace your fingers together, and then you're going to lock your elbows straight. And then you're going to put your shoulders directly over your arms. So this way everything's locked nice and straight, and you're going to push all your weight coming down onto that heel of the hand on the person's chest. And what you want to do is you want to press down hard enough to compress the chest about a depth of 2 inches and fast enough at a rate of about 100 per minute. So this is actually really going to give you a good workout if you're not used to it, because the idea is you're going fast enough to mimic the heart beating itself, and you have to press hard enough in order to actually get the contraction, and then make sure you're releasing fully in between each compression to get that full recoil to allow blood to flow back into the heart. That's why you want to do about 100 per minute. Usually due to adrenaline, a lot of people end up going faster than this, so you want to make sure you're slow enough that it's 100 per minute, but not too slow that it's under. And this is the depth for adults, who basically is that it's anyone over the age of 8. For kids who are 1 to 8, you want to use only one hand locked straight and use the heel of your hand, and you're pressing down for about an inch to inch and a half. As far as depth goes. Remember, kids are smaller, so their chests are smaller, and obviously as adults, we're going to be bigger. So when we're pressing down, you don't want to press quite as deep as if you were giving CPR to an adult. For infants, it's a little bit different. You want to use only 2 fingers, and usually you want to use your ring finger and your middle finger, and you're going to compress the same spot on the chest again, but you're only compressing at a depth of about a half an inch to an inch. And the rate is still the same regardless of age. You want to do at least 100 compressions a minute. The real big difference is the depth. You want to make sure you're not going too deep for infants or children, because obviously you can cause injury. Key thing here is obviously the individual is not breathing, they don't have a pulse, so you need to do compressions regardless. So make sure you're just doing compressions. It's better than not doing anything. And a big thing here you want to also keep in mind is sometimes people, they end up having lack of heart function because they were choking. So after providing CPR for about a minute or 2, you want to just look at the back of their throat to see if there's anything blocking their airway. If that's the case, gently roll the person onto their side and try to sweep that out. Obviously be careful, because if you do that, sometimes you will start breathing, so just keep an eye as far as making sure that they don't accidentally clamp down on your finger. But the key thing here is you want to make sure you're doing compressions as quickly as possible, in starting them that is, and then continue them until emergency personnel arrive or you get so tired that you're unable to continue. Another key consideration for children and infants is that usually, for whatever the reason that their heart stopped functioning correctly, it's due to more of a respiratory issue than a cardiac issue. Most adults, it's related to their heart not functioning correctly as to why they need CPR. For kids, it's more related to their respiratory system not working. And so usually you want to provide at least 2 minutes of CPR prior to calling 911. Obviously with cell phones nowadays, that's not necessarily always a concern, but you definitely want, with kids, is that they are more likely to have a spontaneous resuscitation than adults, just because of the fact that their issue is not usually related to the heart itself, but due to their lungs for not functioning correctly for some reason. So as you can see, the basic steps are the same. It's really just the depth and what you're using as far as compressions. 2 hands, 1 hand, or 2 fingers. So once again, you just want to remember to start CPR as quickly as possible and then continue until emergency personnel arrive. As you can see, CPR is a critical element of helping a person survive a life-threatening situation. By knowing the steps and implementing them quickly, you're going to help that person have the best chance at survival. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Please like, subscribe, share. Otherwise, until next time, stay healthy.